name is Camille Ricketts, and I run content and marketing at First Round Capital. And I work with Wiley Cirilli, who was going to moderate, but he didn't want to be the only man on the agenda. So he passed the torch to me. Lucky day. And I am joined by a really remarkable panel to talk to you about user acquisition. Really quick show of hands, how many of you would say user acquisition is in your top 3 priorities right now? Okay, so this is going to be a really useful panel, hopefully, for everybody here, and we're going to try to be as tactical as we possibly can so you walk away with something you can apply today. So like I said, I'm joined by remarkable entrepreneurs here who have tremendous experience acquiring users in many different fashions, and that's what I think is so exciting about these particular women, is that they've approached things in very different ways corresponding to their business models. So without further ado, I'll have them introduce themselves, say what their companies do, and also offer what they believe is one of the biggest needle movers that happened to them in terms of user acquisition. So I'll start with you, Chantel.
Hi, I'm Chantel Waterbury, founder and CEO of Chloe and Isabel. We are a fashion jewelry lifestyle brand that is enabling and empowering female entrepreneurs to run their own Chloe and Isabel retail businesses. And one thing that really moved the needle for Chloe and Isabel was having success stories or testimonials for people that are entrepreneurs, so that they could be highlighting real life how Chloe and Isabel is benefiting their lives.
Hi, I'm Hayley Barna, co-founder of Birchbox, a beauty and grooming e-commerce company. We launched over 5 years ago. And one of the things that really worked for us in terms of consumer acquisition, we're actually a two-sided platform. We had to get brands signed on and then consumers. But in terms of consumers, was building into our product something that people wanted to talk about and share, whether that was in the real world or online. So part of the magic of Birchbox is that it's something that you buy for yourself, but you actually don't know everything that's coming. So the anticipation and the surprise and delight of opening a Birchbox was something that people loved to talk about, whether it was with their coworkers when their bright pink box arrived, or whether it was readers of their blog or watchers of their YouTube channel. So that good old-fashioned word of mouth was a big needle mover for us early on.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that later on.
Hi everyone, I'm Amanda Bradford. I'm founder and CEO of The League, which is a dating community designed for high-achieving, ambitious young professionals that are looking for an equal partnership. What we do is we double authenticate all of our users with Facebook and LinkedIn, and we use that mashup of data to actually create kind of an admissions-based community. What moved the needle for us is I had recently graduated from business school when kind of formulated the idea, and I really kind of leaned into the niche of business school students. So I really went out of my way to meet Harvard and Wharton, and I was coming from Stanford, and I knew there was a need really within that very, very small target market, I saw that around me, and so I really kind of used that niche to get those users on, and I think getting those users on allowed us to get the PhDs on, allowed us to get the doctors and the lawyers, and then the young professionals from my background at Google and Salesforce came on. And so I think it definitely helped to kind of be really focused at the beginning with who we were solving the problem for.
Awesome, thanks so much. So since you each have had very unique experiences, I want to ask a question that's sort of tailored to each of them. I'm going to start with you, Chantal. I know that a lot of people in here are very early in their entrepreneur experience, and before you dig into like data-driven growth and cohorts and all of that, it kind of starts with having a really compelling brand and being able to position your brand and think about that in terms of future user acquisition. So it'd be great if you could talk about that in regards to Chloe and Isabel.
Absolutely. So for Chloe and Isabel, it was never about, and still isn't about, whether or not how to sell a piece of jewelry, but it's really about how do you find that entrepreneur that both needs this opportunity, but is also a match for the brand and our mission. So fine-tuning our voice, our positioning. What were we looking for? Because we didn't want to go out and say, oh, we're looking for women between the ages of 18 and 45. I mean, that's a very large subset of women. So it became, okay, we're looking for a creative and confident woman. And then we thought, okay, well, let's drill down beyond that. And Is she a fashionista? Is she a socialista? Is she an aspiring entrepreneur? Is she a tastemaker? And building up all these different personas, because you have to be able to speak to everyone, but only have her hear you. And then have that person come in saying, what is this about? Because it was interesting, as we created this application process, what we found, there was a section within the application that's called C plus I plus U. And 80% of the applications that filled that out spoke to, I'm such a Chloe, or I'm such an Isabel, or I'm one of these personas. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know they were reading that stuff. This is amazing. Little things that we thought were almost like inside jokes, or things that we knew as a corporate company, became some of the most visible things out into the community. And it allowed us to sort of pre-qualify who was going to be a part of our company, because she's the storefront of the brand. So qualifying that person became critical to our success, because if we could build a community of like-minded women, then it would just, our theory was, it'll just naturally grow from there, because we've been so selective. So in the beginning, we only accepted like 5 to 10% of all applications, and we interviewed every single one of them in person. I mean, it sounds insane, like when I think back, like, how did we ever do this? But when we were trying to build 50 people, there's a big difference between being 50 and 5,000, and we wanted to get like the first 100 as right as we thought it could be. And it actually did, in fact, happen from there, because we had fine-tuned that brand voice, that positioning, and we were so careful about the first users, I guess you could say. That brand awareness became really obvious in the right places, and it organically grew from there.
And I'd actually love to just underscore what you said about knowing what your brand is and knowing what your brand isn't is so important early on. We were pretty scrappy when we first started Birchbox, and it was just 3 of us. We were moving so hard to launch date we had just set. But we realized we didn't know what we wanted to write on the homepage. What's that tagline? What are the 3 bullets of why you sign up? And one of the best investments we made was taking a day with a friend who was willing to just volunteer her time as a brand consultant to help us figure out who Birchbox was and who our customer was. We actually went through magazines and we ripped out images. Yes, this is Birchbox. We also ripped out images. No, this is not Birchbox, and why?
That's so
and the
important.
3 of us actually had different opinions on some of those, and we had to talk it through. Yep. We also got to 3 words that represent our brands. We don't use them anymore, but at the time they were discovery, discernment, and delight. And we were like, okay, those are the 3 bullet points. Full sentences, but we used those on the homepage. And then we also named our customer and described her. Her name is Alex. That's the Birchbox customer. We talked about where she likes to hang out and why, what kind of person she is. And everything you do has a better ROI if you're focused with it. If your brand is diffuse and you're partnering with random people or not being super clear with your message, then the ROI isn't
you end up speaking to no one.
Exactly.
As a segue from, you have your core, message that you're trying to send, and then how do you amplify it? I know that PR played a massive role in Birchbox's early success. Would love to hear about how you really thought about that in terms of user acquisition and not just, being really well known.
Yeah, so PR was a big part of early growth for Birchbox. We had run a beta test when we were still business school students. So 200 customers, we signed up and then actually shut it down. We're just 200 customers. And then when we planned for launch, we were hoping to get 1,000. Take those 200, we're like, oh, we'll just send them an email and then viral loops will start happening. Turns out it wasn't really viral. We got some of those 200 to sign back up, and then we eked our way to 600. We were like, okay, we're gonna have to do this better than just friends of friends. Let's try some PR. We did it ourselves at first. You don't need a PR firm early on. You could write your own press release. I promise you that if you go on LinkedIn, you probably know someone who writes at some magazine. That's literally what we did at first. We got 1 sentence in the New York Magazine style section, which led to coverage by the In Style fashion blog. And then from there, we all of a sudden had customers in all 50 states. I'm someone who loves numbers and quantifying things. I thought PR was oh, mushy, that. How do you know that works? You actually see the traffic, you see it convert. So it became a big part of our growth strategy after launch as well, and we hit different segments. We hit tech press, we hit the fashion beauty blogs, and we also told the story of us as female founders, which is something that all of you can do as well. Consumers really love to put themselves in the shoes of being a founder and a CEO. And it's something that helped our brand resonate with our potential customer base.
That's very helpful. And then taking it even further, I know, Amanda, you have a lot of expertise in sort of geographic user acquisition. So how do you take what works on a small scale and then say, we're going to do it everywhere?
Good. Don't ask me about PR. I have a love-hate relationship with PR.
All press isn't good press?
It is. No, press helped us a lot with our launch too. So it's just hard to it's hard to sometimes control your message, which is what we've learned as as we've matured over the last year. With respect to regional launches, so we're only in 2 cities right now. We launched in San Francisco a year ago, and then we launched in New York this May. And similar to Chloe and Isabel, we spent a really long time making sure that we kind of had a really good set of founding users. So we kind of artificially created a smaller community. So we launched with only 1,000 people in San Francisco, even though we had over 3,000 at the time of launch who had signed up. And same with New York. We launched with 2,000 people, and we had over 10,000 on the wait list. And I think, again, I looked at it less of this kind of elitist, snobby, like, who's getting rejected kind of thing, and more about like who are our brand ambassadors who are going to be sharing this and who are defining the kind of busy, professional women that we want to be telling their friends about this. And so we kind of looked at that as almost like our early ambassadors, and then obviously we grew out a lot faster than that. But we really spent a long time making sure that the first people using the product are the people that you want. And if we didn't have those people, we would go out and kind of figure out a way to get those people on. So I think making sure your early users are kind of right in your target market. And then the other piece, we also are I'm a big believer in events. I think, especially with dating, people still, for some reason or other, feel like they like to say they met in person, right? It's just this sort of natural human feeling where it feels like it's like a better story if you met in person serendipitously. So we do have a lot of mixers, and we've had events to drive user engagement, and we typically have events like a couple weeks before we launch in each city to build up that wait list for that city and to kind of start the buzz. And then when we launch, there's obviously another spike. And so we actually saw that as more effective than just kind of doing an event on your launch date. So it allows you to kind of have like two different acquisition moments. But yeah, so it's been, we're very much like city by city focused on kind of what defines that city's DNA.
That's really smart. And this next question, sort of going off what you said about the importance of ambassadors and cultivating that identity. I know that social media and influencers have been vital to each of you in different ways. I'd love to start with you, though, Amanda, just based on what you said about ambassadors, and talk a little bit about the tactics you used with either social media or getting in touch with influencers that really helped you out.
So I feel like these two probably did it better than I did, but for me, I think it was less of I was really adverse to the concept of like paying someone to tweet for me, or we had a couple of people from like Hollywood reach out and be like, you can pay them in equity or in dollars for this, Bethany Frankel to like endorse the league. And I'm like, these are not, that's kind of not our brand. Our brand is not having Hillary Duff use the league. Our brand is like, the girl that is working in finance and working 90 hours a week that is put together, is ambitious, and is kind of this career-oriented female. And she's probably not going to want to post on Facebook that she's joining a dating app. So I think part of it was just kind of being true to our brand. And so what I did was really try to get people that are influential in their own social circles, and less about using social media, and more just about kind of telling it, whether it's through emails or something that's a little more private. Because one of our value propositions is that because we use LinkedIn, you are blocked from your coworkers, you're blocked from your Facebook friends, and you're blocked from anyone you're LinkedIn connected with. So it's very much for kind of private people that want to keep work and personal life separate. And so actually the first time I've seen someone really post vividly on Facebook was a success story, and we didn't even ask her to post. I had written an article about kind of this alpha female prototype, I guess, and she shared the article and then mentioned in the comment that she had met her boyfriend on the league and tagged him and tagged me. And it was just like, this was sort of like the best feeling, because I never asked her to do that. It was like the most organic post you could want as a brand. And she did that because we had successfully matched her with her boyfriend. So I think just kind of staying true to to who your users are and doing what you think your users would actually want to do for you organically.
That's awesome. And both of you, what are your techniques that you would recommend to take advantage of social media and influencers the most?
So I'm going to separate influencer from social media.
Sure.
The influencer piece, we never went out and tried to, again, pay someone to be talking about the brand. We were very focused on just creating a very authentic experience. And so we didn't necessarily know what an influencer was in fact applying to be a merchandiser. And I remember one day seeing all this traffic hitting our site. I'm like, gee, like, why is all this traffic coming from this website? I didn't even recognize the website. And then when I went there, I realized this is someone who's considered an influencer. And I was like, oh, cool, she drives a lot of traffic. But what was fascinating is she'd become a merchandiser. She'd paid, $175 to launch her own business. We interviewed her, but it's not like we were looking for someone like her. And what we found that was fascinating over the course of time of like watching her business, she could drive a lot of traffic, but she didn't actually have a big business. So her ability to actually get someone to buy a piece of jewelry was very different from her ability to get other people to become merchandisers. So it was great for our business, but we didn't see her running a great business. And that was something that we learned early on, that the connection that they have with their end user to have a successful business has nothing to do with whether or not you're an influencer, but it's great for brand awareness. Then social media, that's critical to our merchandisers or our entrepreneurs' business. So what we did is we actually built tools that integrated her social media with the boutiques that we had built for her. So when you come and you look at, Chloe and Isabel, whether it's Instagram or Facebook, what people don't realize is that it's ours plus, over 8,000 merchandisers that are all feeding into one place, and every single one of her social media accounts is driving traffic directly to Chloe and Isabel with her boutique in mind. So it wasn't so much like how can we run it, but how can we give her training to know how to use social media to run her business, because this is about, again, her business, not ours. So it's like managing, thousands and thousands of social media accounts.
Awesome. And Birchbox, I know it's been critical, social media and sharing.
Definitely. But it's funny how much the social media landscape changes so quickly. When we launched Birchbox, Instagram didn't exist, Pinterest didn't exist, no one was Snapchatting for sure. So we've really had to evolve our approach over time, and I think especially these days you really have to segment the landscape. The influencers who are getting paid, like that didn't exist in the same way that it does today 5 years ago. So really think about them differently than the long tail of influencers, just like the stay-at-home mom or the college girl who has her own blog. She might be a paying customer of yours, but how do you put hooks into your product that makes it something that's easy to write about or share? We've actually changed Birchbox packaging over time to make it more Instagrammable. So we used to write a full paragraph introducing you to the theme for the month. Now we do beautiful photo and inspirational quote. That's just better content these days.
Inspirational quotes, man. They work so well.
And then there's how you as a brand interact on social media. So we've always taken the approach of we create our own content to interact on those channels. We have our own YouTube channel. We're not getting 1 million views, but we're doing it just like our customers are. We're using Instagram, Pinterest, Snapchat, all in different and evolving ways. And I guess to add to what I said about letting your customers see behind the scenes or think that they're part of the story. Everything that you can share about what's going on at headquarters, how you're making decisions, can really create great closeness and engagement between your brand and your customers.
Excellent. Somewhat related, I know that we are entering an era of the growth hacker where growth and marketing are more scientific and data-driven than they've ever been before. But since so many people feel and see that, I think it's gotten to be very intense, and people are looking at a lot of metrics that might not even be that helpful for user acquisition. So I'd love to hear from each of you the role that data is playing for you, but also how it should evolve from the beginning of your business through maturity.
So super early on, we tried a lot of different things and tracked them all. We were like, okay, what's the ROI on this acquisition channel? But then the second thing you have to ask yourself, maybe that one event did really well, but how scalable is this? How many more can we do? And is the cost fixed or is it variable? Those are things that we really thought about when we were figuring out the right approaches for us early on. Now that our business is more mature, we really think about all the different acquisition channels we have, what are the different costs of acquisition, and then what's the quality of the customer. There might be a channel where you're getting customers really cheap, but that's because they don't stick with you, and matching lifetime value to CPA and really tracking it very, very comprehensively is very important.
Yeah, there's looking at the different channels, and again, obviously understanding if there is a CPL and a CPA associated with it, and then also seeing how you can build out what I'm going to call ambassador, or it's that word of mouth. How can you incentivize differently? There's still a cost associated with it, but for a community where you've so highly vetted them, like, can you incentivize them to invite someone to join that community, and then to track again the LTV associated with it? Because it was interesting to see if they're pre-qualified at multiple levels. We saw that the return was twice as much than somebody who again came through, depending on what channel you're looking at. So you want to understand that LTV, which obviously it takes sometimes time to figure that out.
It's always frustrating when you're like month 2 and the investors are like, what's your LTV? And you're like, I don't know, we have 2 months of data.
I know, I'm like, we're still figuring it out. Like, I'll tell you at the end of the year. It just keeps growing. But I think understanding, even mobile has had such an impact on businesses, and thinking about people that are coming through and understanding your brand. And again, we have so much that we need to communicate because it's an opportunity and it's not trying to sell a piece of jewelry, that how much can you see what that opportunity is if you're applying through a mobile experience versus on a desktop experience. So like, we see dramatically different types of LTVs and conversion rates from something like that because we have just an edited version. So being aware of, like, is it worth it just because you can get so many more? Or is the end goal really about quality? So just understand that combination between quality and quantity, and what's the more important thing for your business.
And we're a mobile app, so we use a deep linking tool that provides some pretty interesting data around kind of the number of shares and the number of actual conversions per user. And so we spend a lot of time looking at the kind of the number of downloads we get per press outlet. So for instance, like Good Morning America, contrary to popular belief, is like not nearly as significant to us as like a Business Insider article, for instance. And so like learning things like that helps us allocate where to spend my time, as well as any PR dollars that we put towards a PR firm if we do decide to use them. But the other thing we look at is like, of the users that are coming in, are the users coming in through a friend better than the users coming in through press? And we did find that the retention for users coming in through a direct referral from a link was about 2 times higher. And so we spent a lot of time figuring out, how do we get our users to share? What can we, is it events? Is it inviting them to something exclusive where they have to bring someone new, or they need one conversion or one referral to be able to kind of, be able to get into a specific event or prize or something like that. So we learned a lot about kind of just the importance of referrals.
Absolutely. Do you do any sort of cohort analysis? Is there sort of one metric to rule them all that you all look at to make sure everything is headed in the right direction? Or do you not recommend sort of the one metric rule?
We do it based on life cycle of the merchandiser. So because we're constantly evolving our training, and we're constantly even modifying our sales organization in order to better support the merchandiser, because there's a big difference between being at 800 merchandisers versus 8,000 merchandisers. So we track the different classes where we're really focused on what happens in the first 30 to 60 days, because it's such a critical part of the Chloe and Isabel life cycle. Like, what happens, that activation and that initial engagement is so important, but you have to understand what the nuances are in your business, because if you're constantly changing, if your business is constantly evolving, the cohort's meaningless if you don't understand like what changed within each cycle. But
the metric is LTV and how it compares to customer acquisition cost, but customers have year-long relationships with a business, and sometimes you might do something that looks good in month 1, but you have to track the impact of that over time. So I think just a single metric is never the whole story. There's always more context behind the numbers and the data, and it's important to remember that.
Absolutely.
Ours is pretty, because we're not monetizing yet, it's pretty retention focused, so looking at 7-day, 30-day. And then the other, I guess I'd say the other like North Star metric we have is the number of matches that actually convert. And by convert, we mean a phone number is exchanged or a time, date, and place are exchanged. So we look at that as we're successfully matching people. And I think that helps us stay true to the mission of, being a really good dating app that actually matches you with people you want to meet offline.
I would say like one piece of advice for people who are pre-launch or just started, you and everyone at your company should know the top 3 metrics or KPIs that matter, and you should be looking at them constantly. When you're starting, there's always so many opportunities. You probably have to, people are inbound asking you to do things, and it's really good to have numbers that you're like, does that opportunity help these numbers go in the right direction? Yes or no? Maybe it'll be fun, maybe it sounds good, but are the KPIs gonna move? Yes or no?
And that's actually all that we looked at in the first. We weren't looking at any of these other types of cohorts, but there were 3 KPIs that we identified before we even launched, and that drove every decision that we made over the first 3 years.
Wow.
It was just those 3 KPIs.
That is really excellent advice. Are there any, I love asking this question because it does often surface really tactical stuff, but what are the tools that you recommend, like actual tools that have been instrumental in your successful growth strategies? Like what do you use to keep track of all of this data? And why do you like it?
Employees that love to track things and that aren't scared of numbers. I mean, we hire even our content and social media teams. We're like, no, you guys build your own graphs. You have to think about what your writing or your creative activities are performing. So that's kind of a cop-out. That's not a tool, but
no,
it's
we built all of our own.
Wow.
We built all of our own reporting.
And what was the ROI on that? Are you so happy that it's now custom to what you're doing, or?
Well, yeah, because our KPIs are unique to our business. I mean, we tried that different. We ended up building our entire platform. In the beginning, we thought we could actually build on top of another entrepreneurial type platform. And when we discovered how much we wanted to enable our merchandiser with technology, it would have been impossible to do. So the first year was just building this platform that onboarded, trained, supported, gave customizable things. I mean, it was all building technology for pretty much almost the first 2 years.
Wow.
So everything was custom made.
And we implemented Tableau pretty early. I think they laughed at us because they're a pretty enterprise B2B software, and they're like, how many people do you employ, thinking they're going to get some big commission check? And I'm like, well, there's 2 of us. But I knew that eventually we'd want to be able to have the ability to slice and dice anything in the database and join tables, and so that's been really helpful down the road now, because we can easily look and see from both how the algorithm's performing all the way to marketing metrics and conversions. So
awesome. And this is something that Hayley, you touched on earlier, but that your story as a woman entrepreneur can actually be really impactful in terms of acquiring users, or at least raising awareness. I'd love to hear from each of you how that's been true in your own experiences and what ways people might be able to project or amplify their own identities to help them.
Well, for Chloe and Isabel, it's a really direct connection because I'm a female entrepreneur that's empowering female entrepreneurs. So many of the people coming through, many of the people applying, directly reference even my story and how they're excited to join a company that wants to directly train them on the same things that I've done. So it's probably one of the most powerful stories we have is being a female entrepreneur.
How have you told it? What channels have you used to tell that story?
So many different channels. Ultimately, I think even if you're telling, say, a business media outlet, it's really about how do you get, wherever you're telling it, how do you get back on your site? So there might be video, there might be somebody who wrote it up. Again, it could be Business Insider, it could be Wall Street Journal. I mean, all these, if you can get all those stories written, that's great, but how do you get it into a place where she can find it? Because she's ultimately coming to our site where she wants everything to be there. I don't want her to have to be searching all over the place to find information about it, but how do we package it all together to give her the story that she really wants to hear, answer all the questions that she has.
So Birchbox is a very simple business model. Maybe some of you in the audience have even thought, oh, what could I put in a box and sell it monthly. Maybe some of you are putting things in boxes and selling it monthly. So I think we inspired a lot of our customers that they were like, oh, I could be those girls. Like, that idea isn't crazy technical, it isn't very complicated, it was a very elegant, simple insight. And we've kept that alive by telling our story, but also by constantly soliciting feedback from our customers and asking them what can we do to make their Birchbox experience better, both through like quantitative surveys, but also our approach to customer service, the way that we respond to every single social media interaction that we have. Even though we're a bigger company now with 1 million subscribers and 300 employees, we like to make it feel like we're your girlfriends that started a business and really still want to hear what you think.
What would you say is the channel that you told that story through that made the biggest impact?
Oh, I think actually press did it pretty well for us, but then Katya and I, we would get on our YouTube channel and talk about our product every month, and I think people got to know us just as human beings through that.
I think we're running out of time, but for us, I mean, I tried to tell the message to press. I think the discerning readers, luckily a lot of our target demographic realizes that the press sensationalizes headlines, and so a lot of our readers would read the articles, and they tended to actually do a decent job of explaining our value proposition, explaining kind of that this is for busy, career-oriented people. And so if you read, you kept reading, I think they would then get to the part about me and how, I'm one of the people that are suffering from this dating app issue. And so I think, it wasn't immediately. I think, like for Birchbox, I like how I remember as soon as I saw Birchbox launch, it was a lot about the founders, but for us, it was a lot about kind of this polarizing, elitist vibe. And so I think I recently just wrote a first blog post sort of explaining, why I launched it, what issues I had as a single career-oriented professional, and got a ton of women and men writing in and saying, like, thank you, I relate to you. And so I think sometimes you have to kind of take control of the message and write your own story, and don't depend on press to tell your story, because they're going to tell whatever the story they think gets the most clicks.
Awesome. Well, thank you, each of you, for being here and sharing really helpful advice with the audience. I do want to remind everyone that before you get up for the break, we do have a short workshop session. So take 10 minutes, go around the table that you're sitting at, and talk about how you have encountered and then also surmounted the challenges that we've been talking about on stage. Could be a helpful question just to ask, what have you done that has made the biggest difference for user acquisition? But otherwise, thank you so much.
You definitely have to say something.
Oh, sorry.